No one announced it. There was no press conference, no advertising. While the entire world watched banks collapse, governments rushed to save the system, and ordinary people pay the bill. Someone left a message, not in a video, not in a speech, but hidden where almost no one looks. What's strange is that more than a decade later, everyone talks about price, charts, gains, and losses. But almost no one talks about why this all began. What if I told you Bitcoin wasn't created to go up in price? Not to compete with banks? Not to make anyone rich quickly? What if the real story, and the one that never makes headlines, is about rules, control, and quiet freedom? Today, I want to show you Bitcoin's untold story. And the message Satoshi left behind. Not for the market, but for those willing to look beyond the obvious. Before we talk about technology, money, or charts, we need to go back in time to the exact moment trust broke. 2008 wasn't just a financial crisis. It was a crisis of trust. Banks once considered untouchable collapsed in days. Ordinary people lost homes, jobs, retirements. And when everything started to fall apart, the system reacted the way it always does. It saved itself. Trillions were created out of nothing. Institutions that failed were rescued. And the bill, quietly, landed on those who were never asked. At the time, many people felt something was wrong, but couldn't quite put it into words. Money still worked, cards went through, paychecks still hit accounts. But a question began to surface like a low background noise. If the rules can change when the system is at risk, who really controls the game? It was exactly in this environment, with trust broken, with the system showing its seams, that Bitcoin appeared. No announcement, no visible founder, no company, no marketing, no promises. And in the very first block of the network, Satoshi left something almost everyone missed. It wasn't a slogan, it wasn't a technical explanation. It was a record of the moment. A short sentence, placed there on purpose. And once you understand that sentence, Bitcoin stops looking like a tech experiment and starts revealing what it always was from the beginning. In Bitcoin's very first block, there is a sentence engraved forever. It's not there by accident. It's not decorative. And it's not just there to prove a date, as many people repeat. The sentence reads, "Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." A real newspaper headline, a perfect snapshot of that historical moment. While governments prepared yet another bailout for banks that failed, someone was launching a system that could not be bailed out, manipulated, or reset by anyone. That changes everything, because that sentence isn't an empty criticism, it's context. Satoshi didn't write a manifesto. He didn't record a speech. He simply placed Bitcoin inside the failure of the old system, as if quietly saying, this exists because that doesn't work. The message isn't, the government is evil. It's deeper and more uncomfortable than that. When money depends on trust in authorities, that trust will always be tested and almost always broken. Bitcoin is born exactly at that breaking point, not to replace banks with another bank, not to swap politicians for new ones, but to remove the need to ask for permission. And once you understand that, you realize Bitcoin was never about getting rich fast. It was about taking money out of the realm of promises and placing it into the realm of rules. Rules that don't change in a crisis. Rules that don't need bailouts. Rules that don't explain themselves, they simply work. And this is where the story becomes even more interesting, because that message didn't stay in the past. After that sentence in the Genesis block, everything about Bitcoin starts to make sense in hindsight. Limited supply, clear rules, no authority to adjust things mid-game. That's not coincidence. It's a direct consequence of the problem Satoshi was pointing to. In the traditional system, when something goes wrong, the solution is almost always the same. More credit, more printing, more time borrowed from the future. In Bitcoin, that option doesn't exist. There is no emergency button, no extraordinary meeting, no plan B. If a rule is written, it applies. When the market goes up, when it goes down, when it hurts. And that's exactly what makes the system uncomfortable for many, and trustworthy for those who understood the message. Because Bitcoin doesn't promise emotional stability. It promises logical consistency. You know how many coins will exist. You know when they'll be issued. You know no one can create exceptions for you. In a world addicted to quick fixes, that feels rigid. But look closer and it's the opposite. It's predictability inside an unpredictable environment. That's why every time the traditional system enters crisis, attention returns to Bitcoin. Not as a trend, not as a gamble, but as a reference. And the more the world repeats the same mistakes, the clearer it becomes why that sentence was engraved in the very first block. Because the story didn't end in 2008. It only started there. Since 2009, the scenery changes, but the pattern repeats. Crises come and go. Bailout plans change names. Numbers get bigger. Timelines stretch longer. And in every new stress cycle, the same question rises. Even if no one says it out loud, how long does this keep working? That's where Bitcoin stops being just technology and starts acting like a mirror. It doesn't prevent mistakes. It doesn't promise to save anyone. But it exposes, with brutal clarity, the contrast between two systems. One that depends on continuous trust in human decisions. Another that depends on immutable rules, applied equally to everyone. When banks fail, Bitcoin doesn't comment. When governments expand the money supply, it doesn't react. When the world panics, it keeps producing blocks at the same pace. That indifference is the message. Not because Bitcoin wins when the system fails, but because it was designed assuming failure is inevitable. That's what makes the Genesis block sentence so powerful even today. It doesn't talk about a specific event. It talks about a recurring behavior. Every time the solution pushes the cost into the future, the problem only changes its date. Bitcoin quietly offers an alternative, a system where the cost is paid in the present and the rule cannot be renegotiated later. Maybe that's why so many still don't understand it. And maybe that's why so many are starting to pay attention now. Because the message was never about 2008. It was about the same story repeating itself. Bitcoin's untold story doesn't end with Satoshi. It ends, or begins, with whoever is listening right now. Because in the end, this was never a story about code, not about price, not about getting rich. It was a question left hanging in the air. A sanity test in a world where rules change when they become inconvenient. Where promises are renewed but never settled. Where time works against those who trust too much. Bitcoin doesn't ask you to believe. It doesn't persuade. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't explain. It simply exists, working the same way. Block after block, regardless of who's in power, regardless of the narrative of the moment. That's the uncomfortable part. Because once you understand the message, you can't pretend you didn't see it. You start seeing money differently, time differently, risk differently. This isn't about leaving the system tomorrow. It's about realizing there is an alternative that doesn't depend on future promises. Satoshi didn't leave a manual. He left a signal. And signals don't tell you what to do. They only point to directions. Some will ignore it. Some will mock it. Some will only understand when it's too late. The real question was never, do you believe in Bitcoin? The question was always this: when the rules change again, do you want to be trapped inside the system or prepared outside of it? If this video helped you see Bitcoin differently, hit like and subscribe. Here, we don't chase hype. We read what's written between the lines. And now tell me in the comments, it's no rush, no stage. What part of this story do you think most people still haven't understood?